You won't believe what happened to a woman who was treated like property, only to find real respect, love, and freedom in the most unexpected place. This is the powerful story of Birdie, a young widow in the Wild West whose life took an unforgettable turn when she refused to be bought, sold, or defined by anyone else's rules. Let's rewind to a blistering September afternoon in Stillwater Ridge, a town where the sun beats down harder than the law and gossip travels faster than dust on the wind. Birdie Corbin stood barefoot on the splintered porch of Kellerman's General Store, her heart pounding like a runaway horse. Inside, her late husband's brothers were discussing her future, but not with her. No, they were deciding how much she was worth. Like a broken plow or a lame mule. She's got all her teeth, one said. Decent cook, keeps house clean, another added. Still young enough for kids, if a man's patient. And then came the final price tag. $40 and a decent plow. Horse. That was it. Her value, calculated in coins and livestock. Birdie had spent 6 years married to a man who saw her as nothing more than a burden. Now, with his death, she was back on the auction block, this time by his own blood relatives. No children? Good. No baggage? Even better. She wasn't a person to them. She was inventory, and that's when she made a choice no one expected. She walked away. Not back to the cabin. Not into town, but toward the horizon, toward something unknown, something better. Now. If you're watching this and thinking, man, I wish I could have seen what happened next, trust me, you're not alone. This is the kind of story that sticks with you. If you felt anything for Birdie just now, don't walk away like part of the 96% who never hit subscribe. You're free to do it. It takes 2 seconds, costs nothing, and helps stories like this reach people who need them. So please hit that button. Let's keep going. Birdie stepped into the streets of Stillwater Ridge like she was walking into a storm. The town knew her name, but not her truth. People whispered, some pitied, most judged. She passed the blacksmith's forge, where sparks flew like angry stars. Past the saloon, where piano music leaked through bat-wing doors like a fever dream. And past the small white church, where she once said vows that meant nothing. At the edge of town, near the livery stable, she saw him. Y. Wright, tall, lean, eyes sharp, but calm. He didn't stare, didn't gawk, just looked at her like he saw her. Like she was not a problem to solve or a prize to win, but a person. And maybe that's the first time in years someone had done that. That night, instead of heading home to a cold pantry bed and Norber's judgmental stares, Birdie slept under cottonwood trees, wrapped in the stars and silence. For the first time in 6 years, she chose where to rest her head, and the next morning, she woke up with a new kind of clarity. She was done playing by their rules, so she went back, not to beg, not to plead, but to ask for work. Honest work. Y didn't promise her anything except hard labor and a place in the loft, but it was more than anyone else had offered. And so, Birdie picked up a pitchfork like it was a sword and started rebuilding her life, one stall at a time. Days passed, weeks. She earned her keep. Her hands got rough, her back ached. But for the first time, the pain felt earned. Y proved to be a mystery. Quiet, steady, always there when needed but never smothering. He fixed tack while she swept barns. He mended fences while she watered horses. Together, they built something real, something respectful. But trouble isn't far behind. Norber rode in again, flanked by Eldon Rakes and some slick-looking guy named Norris Pike. She'll do, Norris says, looking at Birdie like, she's a pair of boots he might buy. Norber boasts about legal papers and court rulings. Turns out, under the law, Birdie is still considered part of the Corbin estate until they decide otherwise. Y doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, just steps between them and says 4 words that change everything. She says no. They leave, cursing, promising revenge. But they leave. Later that night, Birdie sits in the loft fighting back tears. Y appears with a blanket and something even better, truth. You didn't have to stand for me, she whispers. Yes, I did, he says, because you're not property. You're a person, and people deserve the dignity of choice. It hits her like lightning. He's not trying to save her, he's trying to see her, and that's rarer than gold. As days turn into autumn, things start shifting. Moses Glay, the grumpy stable owner, notices the difference Birdie brings. Tools are in order, horses are cared for, meals appear without fuss. And why? He leaves coffee brewing in the mornings, shares his lunch without fanfare, and somehow always shows up when help's needed most. But Birdie begins to wonder, what exactly is she to him? A roommate? A worker? A passing guest? One afternoon, she overhears Moses warning why. You know she ain't your responsibility. Females like that only bring trouble. Y replies, she earns her keep. But Moses pushes further. Are you planning on making her yours? Y pauses, then says, not unless she asks. Those 4 words echo in Birdie's heart like thunder, across prairie skies. Not unless she asks. No assumptions, no pressure, no decisions made for her, just space, just choice. And that's when Birdie realizes something. She's been preparing for this moment her whole life. Learning how to recognize love when it finally showed up, not in silk and roses, but in calloused hands and quiet strength. A few weeks later, Norber returns, with official documents, witnesses, and Norris Pike smirking like he already owns her. But Y pulls out a ring and asks the question that changes everything. Will you marry me? She says yes. Not because she's desperate, not because she's scared, but because somewhere between mucking stalls and fixing bridles, she found a man who saw her, respected her, trusted her. Their wedding is simple, under cottonwoods, with Moses as witness. And from that day forward, Birdie becomes more than a widow, more than a possession. She becomes herself. The town watches, whispers, adapts. Children wave, merchants offer kindness. Even the banker tips his hat. But the biggest changes happen in small moments. How Y asks before assuming. How Birdie sings while she works. How they disagree, then talk it out. Not with fists, not with silence, but with honesty. One winter evening, sitting on the porch they built together, Birdie reflects on her journey. I used to think I was cursed, she tells Y. Born under a bad star. He smiles, carving wood into something beautiful. You weren't waiting, he says. You were preparing, learning how to recognize love when it finally showed up wearing work clothes instead of Sunday best. And that's the truth of it. Birdie wasn't rescued. She was seen. And that made all the difference. So here's the thing. Life doesn't always hand us fair deals. Sometimes we get sold short, sometimes we feel invisible, but sometimes, just sometimes, we meet someone who gives us the greatest gift of all, the freedom to choose. If you enjoyed this story, share it. Like it. Comment below with where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because stories like Birdie's deserve to be heard. Don't be part of the 96% who watch and walk away. Be part of the 4% keeping these stories alive. Thanks for watching. See you next time. They climbed into thinner air. By dusk, the trees were sparser, the wind sharper. At a plateau above the timberline, they paused to rest. She sat on a flat stone, knees pulled to her chest. He stood at the edge, scanning the land below. Why are you still here? She asked. He didn't turn. You need someone to watch your back. I could have left in the night. I know. Silence stretched long between them. Then she said softer, You don't owe me anything. He turned then, looked at her truly. I know, he said again. And it was the truth. He didn't owe her anything. But he still carried her. In the way he slept light and faced the wind. in the way he walked slightly ahead, shielding her from sightlines, in the way his body had begun to measure safety in her breaths, her steps, the tilt of her head as she listened for danger. That night, they found an old trapper outpost barely standing, tucked in the crook of the mountain like a secret. The eye. Roof leaked, the floor sagged, but the stove still worked, and the door still latched. She pressed her back to the wall once they were inside, exhaled slow, then slid down into a crouch. He moved to the window, keeping watch. "Will you ever ask?" she said, not looking at him. He didn't pretend, not to understand. "When you're ready," he said. A log cracked in the stove, sudden and loud. She flinched, but only slightly. Then she looked up at him. "I was sold," she said, voice flat even. "Not in the way folks pretend not to see, in the real way, coins in a palm, a contract signed." He didn't move, didn't speak. "I ran the first time, got dragged back. Second time, I killed one of them." She touched the revolver. "Now!" And I kept running. Wind keened against the walls, but inside it was still. He nodded slow. "Then we keep running." "No," she said. "We start turning." And he understood. She wasn't prey anymore. Neither of them were. That night, he taught her to clean the rifle. In the morning, they followed the tracks instead of hiding from them. Still side by side, still quiet, still carrying something between them, not burden, but bond. Something heavier than fear, something that would not let them put each other down. If you loved this story, share it. Like it. Comment below with where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because stories like Claire's deserve to be heard. Don't be part of the 96% who watch and walk away. Be part of the 4% keeping these stories alive. Thanks for watching. See you next time.